Why has Senakakwen Isquis Michelle Kin Sinai. Hello, good day. My name is Michelle Week. I am Sinai or Arrow Lakes by the way of Colville Confederate Tribes in Washington State. I am a 2022 Community Food System Fellow with the Vital Villages Network. And I'm really excited to share with you all today what we've learned in the fellowship and how I intend to continue practicing and applying what we've learned with our community here in the Portland Metro. I'm going to share my screen so we can get into who Xast Sqit Good Rain Farm is and all of our fun activities we engage in. So we are Xast Sqit, which translates to Good Rain Farm, and that is in the Sinai language that I use to introduce myself. It is the first and foremost name of the company that is showcased in our logo here. And I did this intentionally as a person who comes from a community that was not recognized. We were actually considered extinct and as recently as 2021. And we very much aren't extinct. I have a whole extended family, and learning to speak the language has been really exciting to share that with my cousins, to hear my grandmother remember speaking the language in her household. Has just been really amazing experience and a wonderful way for us to really have other folks wrap their mouths around our language and around our continued existence here and really help amplify our visibility in our community. So food sovereignty efforts are often much more nuanced and larger than just food focus or land focus. They encompass cultural practices, life ways, the way that we view the world and our interaction and relationships within it, as well as language, of course. So we do language justice work as well. So I've often been told to just be quiet and just farm and to talk about just farming. And I would like to share that farming is more than just working in the soil and working with the plants and the animals and watching the weather and being aware of weather patterns. As I mentioned, it is cultural practices and life ways and language. It has, so much to do in just other avenues of our life, but also in our political realm. As I mentioned, the Sinai were considered extinct. And that is a very political decision made by our governments, both Canada and the United States. So really sharing that we are still here, that we are still, practicing our ways is really important to myself and to share that with our community at large. So I'll be talking about a lot about what Xast Sqit does outside of just farming and why it's all so important. So we focus much on Native food sovereignty, and that is in the growing, cultivating, and foraging collection of our Pacific Northwest perennial first foods. However, we are tenant farmers, and so collecting a lot of these Pacific Northwest specific first food varieties is really difficult since we haven't had a solid relationship with a piece of land for more than 2 years. And that can be really frustrating for myself and really frustrating for our community in trying to share these foods and trying to decolonize diets. And so we really additionally have to kind of expand ourselves as well to hold all of our community. So we in the Portland Metro are one of the largest metros of Native communities. Native peoples were relocated to various locations, first to reservations, but later many of those were disbanded and underfunded, defunded, and closed down, and people were then sent to live in urban areas where to this day it is possible that there are more educational and job related opportunities, economic opportunities in urban spaces. So a lot of us continue to live a modern contemporary native life in urban spaces. But that also means that we have kind of been disconnected, twice now removed from our traditional homelands, and we don't necessarily have access to those original foods that we consumed, or we're not necessarily taught what foods were indigenous to North America, to Turtle Island. And so that is a lot of our effort here at Xast Sqit, is decolonizing diets, sharing that tomatoes they evolved in South America from the indigenous peoples there, and were brought north in trade routes and in community, gifted and rotated. And, we found that we very much enjoyed them and bred them to our own geographies and weathers and taste preferences. And then we can continue to see that those tomatoes then found their way to Italy, and then to pizzas and all those great foods we love and enjoy. So really celebrating the culture of all these foods is really important. And one of the favorite things, I'm also a bit French European, and one of my favorite things are these beautiful January king cabbages. So a lot of our cabbage and kale and turnips and radishes, these brassica families, come from Europe, and we all very much enjoy in those foods. And I like to dive deep, and you really got to get digging to find the history of those foods. And one of my favorites is turnips. And turnips are actually where we started carving pumpkin heads and pumpkin faces. So way back when in Europe, they would carve turnip faces, and then they would shrink up. And if you Google them, they're quite terrifying, but really fun story to share with our customers and our community. So our business specifically supports lifelong learners. I myself am a lifelong learner. It's what draws me to participate in a fellowship like this offered by Vital Villages. I encourage employees and of course our community are always learning histories and stories of our foods. We have a very horizontal management style in our business. My intention originally in founding Xast Sqit was that it would be a worker-owned cooperative, and we are working towards that actively, and always practicing horizontal management practices and and sharing those decision-making practices. We also follow a set of buying guidelines that I'll share in a moment. We have a variety of payment pathways to make sure our food is available and accessible to all. And we like to collaborate with our community, asking them what they need, what are their priorities. Oftentimes, I think we'll find that everyone wants fresh local foods, but that may not be the first and foremost priority to healthcare, to employment, to transportation concerns, or housing. So recognizing that the work we do is one small part of this very integral system, and supporting our community where they're at is really important to us. Our food isn't that helpful if someone doesn't have a kitchen to cook it in. So collaborating with other organizations as well to support people in these variety of ways is really important. I also do a lot of advocacy work in the 2023 Farm Bill that's coming up, and I'll speak real briefly on that at a later moment. But know that advocacy is a big piece of what we do. So not only are we on the grounds doing mutual aid and support, and doing more institutional work within Xast Sqit as an organization, but also lobbying and doing efforts at a more state and federal government level as well. I believe in a multi-pronged approach with many tendrils going in deep into these different areas to make change in our community and fight for Native food sovereignty. And then lastly, as lifelong learners, we like to share our knowledge freely. So we really do a lot of pre-education and sharing of information when we can with fellow farmers and peers and each other. At our workplace, we're proud to say that we offer paid time off. We offer a variety of tech, gear, and vehicle stipends. We also offer a decent amount of flex time. And that can be, you know, we have to balance the needs of our plants and animal bosses, as we call them. They really drive, their welfare is really the first and foremost concern of ours. So they really drive our working conditions, as does the weather, and making sure we stay healthy ourselves. But really communicating clearly about and supporting each other in accessing kind of different non-traditional work hours and times the best that we can within the constraints we find ourselves. We do a lot of education. I myself am well networked into educational opportunities, and I'm always sharing workshops and seminars and books. And that's really, I love to be able to share that, especially because so much of the knowledge of the Sinai specifically, or of Native people specifically, comes from colonial white authors. And being able to share that knowledge freely is really important to me. And so getting that out there, collecting different perspectives is really an inspiring part of the work that we do, and then getting to apply that work in our everyday lives has been really inspiring. We also have healthcare now, which we just received this summer in the peak of harvest season in July, and that's really exciting. We're really stoked to be able to have figured that out as a small business of 3.5 people. Yeah, so that's really awesome. We're really happy to offer that to not only myself, but my employees. As I mentioned earlier, we're pretty horizontal leadership. I focus a lot on servant leadership, which is a style of leadership where you really try to make sure that folks have the tools and the resources they need to get the job done, that you're really empowering people to be able to do the work and do good work. We are always striving to pay equity. So really trying to make sure we pay each other a dignified wage and recognize that farm labor is skilled labor, and that no matter the person's background, they deserve a well-paying, livable wage job. And not maybe beyond livable wage, they deserve a thriving wage. A wage where you can save up for big purchases and big life events, and maybe even pass some money along to the next generation, and build that intergenerational wealth. And we have a lot of other kind of behind the scenes, not so glorious justice, equity, diversity, and inclusive initiatives that we do to inform how we do our work, how we offer support in our work, and who has access to both working with us and to consuming and enjoying our nutritious local food. All right. And as I mentioned earlier, I would touch briefly on the buying guidelines. And I'm moving my little screen there. So our buying guidelines are these as follows. You can find a lot of this information also in our annual end year reports that we publish each year for the past 2 years, and we'll be working on our 2022 here very soon as we enter the winter season. I think it's so important to be a transparent business, especially since we are community supported. I want those community members to feel informed and that we're not hiding anything over here. So often we try to purchase used when we can, which is one of my favorite activities. I love finding an awesome deal and Craigslisting really good bang for the bucks. I really enjoy finding good deals like that. You could at a few of our farm locations, we've been able to share or borrow other peer farmers' tools and equipment. And so always sharing that, and at the minimum, always sharing knowledge and Excel spreadsheet templates and whatnot has been really important to us. In our newsletter, we like to share recipes we enjoy or have created. And so that also kind of plays into not just us as a farm business, but us as community members. We buy local when we can from independent, locally owned stores and USA made products. And that's a wide variety of all sorts of things that we buy and use here at the farm, from paper bags to rubber bands to printer ink. All of those things. So Ace Hardware is definitely one of my favorite businesses. They are a co-op as well, which is the next purchasing guideline, is buying cooperatively, or buying in the sovereignty economy. So supporting other Indigenous or Black or other people of color businesses as well. So we buy from Ace Hardware or True Value, Wilco Farm Store. We have a CSA pickup site at the local City Bikes Bicycle Mechanic Cooperative here in town. So we really rejoice in the cooperative economy and non-hierarchical management structures, and what that could look like as its own economy outside of capitalism, where we really prioritize people over profits. We do custom work with custom crafters and hire local craftspeople to do some of our contractor work for building out sheds or fridge trucks, special welding projects, etc. We do try to avoid big box stores, but often you'll find us at Lowe's or Home Depot. They really have a huge selection and unfortunately highly competitive pricing. But we do prioritize, Lowe's when we can, knowing that it's a Black owned business, and really trying to support that economy and those folks thriving wages. So a lot of this comes down to our payment pathways, making sure that people have access to our food. So not only are we trying to support our local economy and keep money locally, we're doing our best to allow people to support and do the same for us, to spend their money locally with a local, sustainable, nutritious local farm business. And we do that through our payment pathways. So we do have a lot of grant writing that happens on the farm that brings in money to subsidize our scholarship fund. We also do in-house fundraisers for our scholarship fund. Right now, it is my birthday in October, and so we are really hoping to fundraise for about 10 CSAs for our community, which is about $5,000. So all those contributions of $25 and whatnot are really helpful in us achieving that. That'll allow us to invest in the business and purchase goods and products that will help us be better equipped to grow more and healthy, vibrant food, and also make sure that we feed community. So as a happy birthday, I would love it if you would give to our scholarship fund. We also accept SNAP, our food dollars programs, both in Oregon and Washington, as a multi-state Portland Metro serving business. And we do our best to also accept and allow people to utilize and take advantage of our double up foods bucks systems in both states as well. That in particular is one of the highlights of our education around community-driven data systems and data collection, and collecting stories and being able to tell those stories in a compelling way to our legislators and the powers that be in how to better make SNAP and food dollars accessible to our consumers, and so they can access direct to farm consumer relationships. And I'll dive a little bit deeper into that, I think, in the next slide. We also do payment plans. So we allow folks to make 5 monthly payments. So over 5 months, they pay in full for their vegetables to support their cash flow needs. So it's not one giant lump sum that gets in the way of their other bills and whatnot. We offer a sliding scale, and that is really all about trusting our community. Trust is huge for us. We really have to put a lot of it out there, and keep putting it out there. And so really believing in our community to step up and to support each other. This is really where the mutual aid is exemplified in action through the farm and our business. And I believe in the past few years now, our sliding scale, we have 3 tiers to that, and that is our market rate. What we've determined is the value of our food. Should it be sold at a farmer's market or at a grocery store next to competitive food? That is our market rate. We offer a below market rate, which is just above what SNAP would cut people off at. As a person who's utilized SNAP in the past and had to calculate how many working hours versus being kicked off of SNAP, like I know where that gray area is, and that kind of math of calculating, am I going to lose more money in food stamps than I would gain through an extra hour at my coffee shop job, right? So we really set up the sliding scale to accommodate kind of that gray area for folks, having experienced it and recognizing that it exists. And then we have an above market rate where folks pay over what we would normally charge at a grocery store or farmer's market. And in the years past, those who paid over our market rate have almost exactly covered that percentage of folks who paid below market rate. And so we're really leveling out, being able to generate the revenue for Good Rain Farm and us, the employees, to have dignified wages, with making sure that that food is accessible to our community at different price points. And that has just been amazing to watch happen year after year, and believing and trusting in our community and being able to celebrate that with our community is, I think, something that is hard to come by sometimes. And I'm just so grateful that we have such an engaged and active community. It's really quite amazing and wonderful. And then we do various add-ons and home delivery as well, to make sure food is accessible and offers complete diets. So we've partnered with egg suppliers in the past, bread, and we offer a native roasted coffee, So really exciting stuff to make sure people could take full advantage of their vegetables that they are receiving. Oh my, it clicked forward again. So I'm going to reshare this screen. And go back. Here we go. So here's a quick pie chart from one of our annual end year reports of how people paid for our CSAs. And you can see how many people, you know, about 3/4 of our CSA members take advantage of some form of payment relief, and almost 50% of our CSAs go free of charge to our end users, and many go to through government subsidies such as SNAP or through the scholarship fund as well. So it's really exciting that we're able to feed so much of our community without being a financial burden on those community members. One of our projects with Vital Villages Network is to do some community data collection through focus groups and listening sessions, both with SNAP food bank recipients as well as CSA farmers specifically. So we're really curious how many food stamp users are aware of their ability to purchase direct from farmers. How important is that to them? How easy is it for them to navigate that process? And the same for farmers, especially CSA, other community supported agriculture farmers. How easy is it for them to offer the acceptance of SNAP food stamps? And what is their experiencing going through that process? So we have a series of focus groups coming up this winter when all us farmers have time and energy to engage in these. And we'll be excited to report back and keep an eye out for our 2022 annual end year report to see some of our insights and learnings from these listening sessions. We were able to team up with a local grocery New Seasons to offer gift cards to participants, knowing and valuing their time and their knowledge, their insight that they are willing to share with us. And we're so grateful for that. So we're really excited to really practice this community-driven data collection and really learn from our community and practice our own skills at hosting events like this and compiling the big takeaways we're gonna hopefully see from these, and how do we communicate that then to policy creators, and how can we enact change to continue to improve and make all those iterative redesigns to the programs that we offered and make sure that they are ever becoming easier and more accessible to our community. I mentioned earlier that I do a lot of advocacy work. So the 2023 Farm Bill is coming up, and a big chunk of it that the Native Farm Bill Coalition hopes to focus on a lot of is Title IV nutrition and food distribution programs on Indian reservations. So right now, the tribal governments are really limited in how and who they can distribute food to. As I mentioned, we serve the Portland Metro. I myself grew up in suburbia and urban spaces. I never grew up on my reservation, and that is true for 80% of natives today. 80% of natives live off reservation, and a large chunk of that percentage live in urban areas, and they cannot receive or readily gain access to the additional tribal support that goes to our nations that focus primarily on reservation residencies. And that is really unfortunate in our ability to promote healthy lifestyles, promote access to healthy, nutritious foods, and tribal foods. As I mentioned on our farm, we also grow tomatoes, beans, corn, squash, sunchokes. There are so many foods that are so common in our diets that we don't recognize as indigenous to Turtle Island, but are also heirloom varieties that are rooted in our indigenous communities. So really highlighting those and sharing those and those recipes is a big way that we reach out to our community and our Native community specifically, in making sure they have access to culturally relevant food. And that it's coming from a Native producer, and it's coming from Native growing practices and worldviews that make a difference in how we navigate our relationship with the earth and the soil, water, and the plants. So this is a big piece of what I'm focusing my advocacy on, is really supporting this particular initiative, and really supporting the expansion of how tribes can practice their sovereignty, practice their governance, and reaching all of their tribal communities, regardless of where they currently reside, whether that is in urban settings or on the reservation or anywhere in between. It's so important that we are able to support our communities. We live in a more complex world where people are seeking higher education, and lots of that takes place in urban places. And they might want to work and live in an urban space because we are modern contemporary people who enjoy some of the conveniences of today's lifestyles. And so allowing people to make these choices is really important to our right and autonomy, and our agents, our ability to have agency in our decision making and how we live our lives. And lastly, I would be remiss to not also then speak about seed sovereignty. Many of our seeds are under trademarks or copyright infringements, and that is making growing and saving seed more difficult, which is impacting sovereignty generally, and food sovereignty more specifically. So we has set up a Save Our Seeds, our SOS program, as a buy one, gift one. We have seed saving kits that go along with these, bi-weekly educational opportunities on how to save seeds. So we're sharing the knowledge of seed saving. We're keeping the knowledge and practice of seed saving alive. And many hands make light work. So we are also saving seed together in community. We are saving some of that seed to be replanted in next year's crop plan at the farm. We are also distributing some of those seeds out to Black and Indigenous and other peoples of color food sovereignty efforts and work as well. We have some local seed libraries and seed exchanges and community gardens that would really benefit from access to this, specifically the Cowlitz Community Garden, another Native food sovereignty effort. The Native American Youth and Family Center has a community garden as well that we supply starts and seeds to, and who we've shared these learning kits with as well. So this really empowers people, educates people, and supports the rematriation of some of our seeds. A lot of this was driven by my own frustration that Indigenous seeds were considered rare or heirloom heritage, and all of those titles allow seed companies to add an additional cost and up the prices on these seeds, making them more financially inaccessible to the fairy communities that they were taken from, that they were stolen from, and that in the process of eradicating and removing natives from our own homelands to make room for the colonial expansion, many of these seeds were destroyed. And there's many varieties that we've simply lost forever. However, through breeding projects and whatnot, maybe we'll rediscover new flavors and colors and tastes, and they're just waiting to be reawoken. brought back to the surface and enjoyed. But we need to know how to save seed first to access that rich history that lies in the genetics of all these seeds. So we do our SOS program as well. So I hope you have a better understanding of Xast Sqit, Good Rain Farm, and what we've been doing here on the farm, what we've taken away from our community food systems fellowship experience, and what we're practicing. A lot of it looks like data collection and community relationship building and conversation. And that's really at the core of what we do here at Xast Sqit is relationship building. Much of it is relationships between us land stewards and the land and the plants. But we would be remiss to forget our relationship to our human community members as well, who consume our food. So thank you so much for listening and learning along with us. And I hope you follow us on Instagram. Again, you can give to our scholarship fund. We're on a variety of other social media platforms, and you can always go to our website and sign up for a newsletter. We send out monthly, so you can stay up to date on what we're up to here at Xast Sqit. And the website to www.goodrainfarm.com is where you would find those annual end year reports that I have mentioned and snagged photos from as well. Thank you, Limlet. Have a good day.